to those watching who maybe don't know me, my name is Newt Warren. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the director of the Viking Union Gallery at Western. And this is my first episode with the series PSA with ASP. And I'm very happy to welcome Jessica, my first guest. Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm Jessica Ghyvoronsky. I am the founder of Seattle Art Post, which is my passion project based in Washington State to support, give exposure to all emerging artists in the state. So started on Instagram, and I'm sure we'll go through more of the story, but yeah, passion is for helping the artist.
That's awesome. So I'm glad that you already mentioned Seattle Art Post. That's one of the things that I wanted to kick off our conversation with. Seattle Art Post is something that, like I said, was introduced to me by a colleague who is our PA. She'll be editing this video. And as I was reviewing the Seattle Art Post website, I noticed that your mission or your about page is giving me a vibe very different from other art institutions where I feel like I have never encountered in my emerging career in the arts an organization with the intent to provide resources and connections to emerging artists in the way that Seattle Art Post does. And I'm wondering what your impetus was for founding the Seattle Art Post. Was there a need that you saw that wasn't being fulfilled, or is there some other story?
No, absolutely. That's definitely the biggest thing. And Seattle Art Post has evolved over time, but the baby stage, the seedling stage, was back in 2014. I was on the bus going to work, and excuse me, I was trying to look for artists, Seattle artists, on Instagram, and it was really hard to find them. Excuse me, I have something in my throat. I need water. It was hard to find artists. And so I started searching hashtags, started searching profiles and trying to see, like, is there some sort of a database where I can access just seeing like what's out there for the emerging art scene? Couldn't find it. So then I just took it upon myself to start an Instagram page where I would do daily shout outs to local artists who I thought were doing really cool work, just to bring some exposure and community out there. And then over time, I quickly saw that the Instagram platform was an amazing opportunity to meet the need for exposure. A lot of artists feel like that is what they are lacking the most, especially when they're emerging. And so that sort of motivated me to figure out, okay, well, I have the capacity and the skills to meet this need. What are some other ways that I can meet the need for the local artist? And so it just sort of evolved over time, over the past, what would that be, 6-7 years, into just trying to identify opportunities that I know, because I'm an artist as well, emerging as well, and what would I want, as an artist starting out in the Seattle, Washington area, what would I want to see? And so that then evolved to the website where I had a resources page. It's still there. It's just all of the different resources out there for artists, whether it be job opportunities or grants or residencies, lawyers, gallery, literally everything that seems to be useful for an artist. I put on my resources page with links because I would want that. And then it evolved into doing what's called art in shops, which is where we connect artists with local small businesses and put on monthly art shows in their like cafes or businesses, free of charge, just to help the community out and help the emerging artists. And so this way emerging artists can have their work out continually. And so we've been doing that for the past, I think, 3 years. And it goes on, there's more, but the root of starting Seattle Art Post was simply an Instagram shout out page that just evolved into so much more over time.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. I guess what you would call the starting stages and then what it's evolved into. I definitely resonate with the feeling of like wanting to find out what's what in a new area.
Yeah.
I'm living in Bellingham, attending Western, and I moved here from another state. Um, I was interested in seeing the arts community here, but I didn't end up taking art studio courses. So I wasn't as plugged into sort of the art studio scene, let alone the more local scene of artists creating things downtown, whether that be public art or art for sale or in a boutique, cafe, etc. Um, and I think it took me much longer than I wanted to finally find myself exactly where I wanted to be within the community, to be
Yeah.
surrounded by people who are um, creative in a way that's challenging to me as, I guess, an undergrad student
Mm-hmm.
looking for a career in the arts. So I do think that Instagram, especially, has this amazing power to connect people,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
perhaps whether we want to or don't want to connect with others. That's what it's built for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through Instagram, I've found more art in every form imaginable than I have anywhere else on any other platform.
Yeah.
Um, and I I think that that's great. The Seattle Art Post started on Instagram. It seems very natural for that
Yeah.
to be the starting point.
And it was actually very surprising to me to see just how many artists there are in Seattle and
Yeah,
Washington State. So many, and so many talented, unrepresented artists. And so that's sort of what lit a fire in me, because I would fall in love with specific artists' work. And this artist, like, happens all the time. An artist will be so talented, have such a creative, authentic voice, execute their work beautifully, and they don't realize it. They don't realize how good they are. They have barely any following. They're not getting their work out there. They're too scared. They're not administratively savvy. And so I feel like it's doing a disservice to our community and to those artists and culture not to put them on a pedestal and not to try to connect them with further opportunity, because man, I was blown away, and I still am. I've been doing this for ever since 2014, like I said. And you'd think that you'd run out of artists to post, every single day for 6 or 7 years. No, there's always more. There's always new artists that I have not discovered. There's so many more out there that I've yet to discover, and I'm excited to find them. But there's so much talent, it's crazy. So I'm really excited to have kicked off a platform like that, so that locals can see just how much there is.
yeah, exactly. I think that that's one of the things that um, was surprising to me as well, as someone who I just recently started working with a local restaurant and filling their walls with some
Right.
art. And the networking part is something that I'm not used to. I haven't been taught how to do that. But I have found that not just within the student community, but within the broader community, there are so many artists and makers and craftsmen that I would not have otherwise discovered.
Yeah,
Um,
same here.
yeah. And I wanted to ask a little bit about, or could you talk a little bit about your background in the arts
Yeah.
before Seattle Art Post? What were you up to,
Oh,
perhaps as an artist yourself or as a professional?
yeah. So, let's see. Definitely not a professional. Still not a professional. Maybe one day. But yeah. So I think most creatives can say that ever since a young age, they were just drawn to expressing themselves through the creative. And so for me, that has always been art ever since I can remember, ever since my mom had a little scrapbook of what do you want to be when you grow up, Jessica? And she writes it down. It was always artist. I just had this internal impulse to make. And so that carried me through, early years, and then eventually I went to University of Washington, Seattle, and I got a scholarship to do art and philosophy, which are my two passions. And so I did the interdisciplinary visual arts program at UW. And honestly, I didn't start with art. I generalized because there was something, for some reason, I thought it wasn't, well, a clear reason. I thought I couldn't study art because it wouldn't bring me a high paying job. And I wanted to make money. I wanted to be practical. And so I really try to avoid pursuing my creative passion until I took an elective. I just took an intro to drawing class and I was hooked after that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to double major. I'm just going to go for it. But what's funny is even when I was in my senior year at UW, and I was in my thesis class where we're, putting on our final show, we're talking about what comes next. Everybody else was talking about like, oh, I'm going to try to get a residency here. I'm going to go to this grad school for art, da da da. And I was just like, oh yeah, that's great. And for me, I was like, oh, I'm not going to pursue art. This was just for fun. For some reason, for years, I would just like think that I couldn't do it. And so I graduated UW in 2010, and then I still made art on my own, just what I felt like making. But I felt like I was still missing something. I was missing context of like, what is the art world even? What does that even mean? I didn't understand what comes next after grad school. If I wanted to pursue art, does that mean I just do it like on my own and like hope it gets seen and hope I get discovered? So I really didn't understand it. And I also felt like I was stunted in my creative development. And so I chose to pursue grad school. So I got my graduate degree, my MFA in visual arts at Azusa Pacific University. Great program, low residency, and that really opened my eyes to the reality of what the art world was, and like the different paths that you can have as an artist. But the biggest thing that it did for me was it helped me to form a critical eye on my own work and to really think about all the interpretations, all the options, and where my art lives today in society. And it really challenged me to want to make art that had purpose, and that was from me. And so then, Seattle Art Post has always been a passion project, like I said, that I just do in tandem. I have a regular job for now to pay the bills, but Seattle Art Post is just something that I do in my spare time because I have the capacity, I have the skills, and so I'm like, why not? I would love to continue to expand it, and it has been expanding every year, but it's just something that I do as part of my art practice in its own way.
Mm. Yeah, you said a lot of great things there. I think that's super interesting that you also studied philosophy. Philosophy was like my first academic love,
Cool.
and then I realized that I could do art history too.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing. That's cool to see
Cool.
someone else having been through a similar path.
And here's the thing, like artists, we're feely people. We're deep feelers, deep thinkers. We're all about the human experience. And so it's not surprising to me that a fellow artist would also be interested in like thinking about the meaning of life and all that philosophy brings. I think that's why I'm most drawn to artists anyway, because creatives just think in a different way, along a completely different dimension. They're a lot deeper, most of them. And so I feel like artists are my people for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's something that perhaps there's some narrative somewhere that we all were taught that if you are a creative, that you can't pursue the financial freedom to actually love the things that you create and creating in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I think that stems from quite a few structural problems, especially within the United States. But I have realized that there are, in fact, routes for people to take to pursue both something creative and something that's going to offer them financial freedom, that's going to teach them financial literacy, to be able to not only create, if not for work, then have the time, the free time to do what you enjoy. Do you feel like you've found that, or that that's something that you're still working towards? Not that there's
Yeah.
an end goal to be achieved, but that I think that's something that most people strive for.
Yeah. Yeah, I might back up a little bit and go back to like right when I graduated undergrad, I was just like, I'm going to get a job in the arts no matter what it takes. I'm going to like find a job. And so I ended up working for a lovely
Oh, I'm
nonprofit.
sorry. My dad called me.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So right after undergrad, I started working for this nonprofit where it was called Community Dinners, and they put on free meals for the community almost every night in 27 up to 27 locations in Seattle. I don't know if we're at 27 quite yet, but mostly the homeless came out, and I would just paint live during the dinner, and that was great. But it was not meant to sustain anybody full time, but I was determined to try to make it, and so I was really pinching pennies there for a while. And so I feel like I was the starving artist, the struggling artist for years. I would say maybe 3 years or so, before I had enough of struggling, and I was like, I am going to just get a job and do my art on the side because I need to pay rent. And so then I just got a office job and then worked my way up through a company, and now I'm in a career job, which is fantastic, and it has given me a lot of financial freedom and also empowerment. Obviously, during the pandemic, it's hard for a lot of people financially, but I'm able to sustain my family and be the breadwinner. And I never thought that would be possible as a woman and as an artist, but it is possible. And I think the end goal that you mentioned, maybe there is one, maybe there's not. For me, there is. It's pretty vague. I would love to be full time in the arts, whether that means I'm just making my own art, or if it means I'm supporting other artists to further their growth. That's the end goal for me. I would love to get there, even if it means I have to take a little bit of a pay cut. But for now, I'm able to do both in tandem, and really take my time developing what Seattle Art Post wants to be as the needs arise and present themselves. So I'm able to make it work for now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely think that that work-life balance is something that I can imagine for other creatives as well as something that's really difficult to achieve, let alone imagine being possible. And it's great to hear from someone who is actively making the moves to find that balance and to pursue the things that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I want to maybe shift a little bit. So, what are some of the, I mean, of course, this past year has been treacherous water to move through, to say the least. But what are some of the unforeseen obstacles that you've come to experience in the past year in the arts world, whatever that may mean, either for you or for people that you've worked with, emerging
Oh my
artists?
gosh, so much. Sorry, by the way, if you hear that clinking, my puppy is currently drinking water and his little collar is clinking. Okay. 2020. Well, first, let me say this. I think during a pandemic, perspective is so key. And I have really tried to maintain a positive perspective throughout and think about things like, hey, I'm working from home a lot. What are the things that I can maximize now that I have more time? And stuff like that. And I really try to maintain an optimistic perspective like that. But no doubt, there were several moments this year where I was just like, are you serious? Like, really? I thought this was going to be the time where we just like move forward. So, to answer your question, the things that were unexpected that happened during the pandemic. One, personally, I was supposed to have my first solo art exhibition in Seattle. And I was so excited. There were all these big projects that I was dreaming up and I was finally ready to do. And that got canceled because of COVID or postponed. The second thing is in 2017 or 18, I forget the year, I did a big Seattle Emerging Art Fair in tandem with the big Seattle Art Fair. And it was huge, great turnout, beautiful space, lots and lots and lots of work. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to do it biannually. And so I was going to do it again this year. And there was even talk of the New York Times coming out to cover it. And I was like, are you serious? And then COVID happened. So we had to cancel that. What else? Actually, I won't go there. There were just a lot of in-person exhibitions, markets for artists, fairs that I was planning on doing, and I couldn't. Some of them I was still pursuing, and then at the last second, the city pulled it out, which I understand per COVID guidelines. But yeah, so it's been hard, but I feel like for me, my motto during this pandemic and just trying to make it all work is adjust. Like maintain a positive perspective and adjust. I think we get disappointed because we have expectations. And so I just need to formulate new expectations. And so one of the exciting things that we were able to do in 2020 was to put on a pop-up art exhibition at a gallery. It was a pop-up art gallery called SAP Gallery that I hope to continue this year. And an amazing property management group gave us the opportunity to have this beautiful space in Juanita Village in Kirkland. And it was for the purpose of exhibiting people of color, emerging artists, underrepresented artists for 2 months. And at first I was like, is it worth it? Because I had a week to get it done. I had 7 days after I found out that I could actually have this space. And I was like, is it worth my money? Is it worth my time? Is it worth the headache of putting a call for art out there and quickly turning around and then bringing in the art and then hanging it and then working with a billion artists to figure out how to do this? And then I remembered artists have had so many canceled shows this year. Yes, it's worth it. Even if we have to jimmy rig it, even if it's just like not perfect and it's like something's wrong every day, let's go for it. So, and I'm so glad we did, because the response from the artists and from the community was one that I was not expecting. Just the level of gratitude for having an opportunity at the tail end of a pandemic and being able to show their work, and then the community really being excited about seeing that type of culture represented on the East Side was unexpected, but really, really rewarding. And I'm so glad we were able to do something to close out 2020 to support the emerging artist.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was just about to ask, what were some of the, I guess, unforeseen triumphs, but it sounds like you sort of covered that with the Seattle Art Post Gallery. So that pop-up space, is that something that, when you mentioned wanting to continue to do similar events in the future, what am I asking? Is that same space what you would be utilizing, or are you hoping to sort of pop up elsewhere?
Yeah, exactly. We want to find really cool, unique spaces in different pockets of Washington State, mostly Seattle area, and do quick shows, just to bring a bit of color, art, culture to neighborhoods who might not have it. Obviously, finances are a huge piece of that, because I finance everything myself. And so if and when the right space comes up, which I have a couple leads right now, we're going to go for it because, you know, last year really proved to me the need for this, the benefit. And so, yeah, I think it's a fun, unique model to try without having to commit to any sort of, you know, set in stone bills or anything like that during a pandemic.
So we know that you founded Seattle Art Post. Is there a team of people that you tend to work with on the regular to uh, manifest events, or are you doing most of the work?
Um, Apart from a recent committee that I formed called the Seattle Art Post Artist Task Force, I do it all. So all the fairs, the galleries, the monthly art shows, all of it I do in my spare time. Pro bono, I call it. But I did have the pleasure of working with some great local artists recently when the pandemic was, you know, we're in the thick of it. And I realized I needed more of a team to help address more of the needs, the unique needs of artists that were coming up in the pandemic. And so we did like, I think it was a 2 or 3 month trial just to see like, hey, what if we get together, talk about the hot topics, try to meet these needs and execute. Let's just try, you know, like we want to step in. Like if anybody's passionate like me and they want to be a part of this community, like let's go. And so, yeah, we were able to do that and had a couple of things fall through due to COVID, but it was really great to have them. We did some like artist talks and meetups over Zoom. The staff gallery was birthed out of that, and some calls for art. So yeah, but generally it's usually just me for now.
Yeah, that seems like, I mean, a daunting task to take on, to do most of the work yourself while also working elsewhere. But given what I've seen of Seattle Art Post, unfortunately not being able to like exist or explore the Seattle metro area a little bit more, but from what I've seen, it's nothing but good things. And I do think that support in any way, shape, or form for emerging artists is something that's seriously lacking. I think was seriously lacking, and especially now is probably going to, I guess, my expectation for 2021 is that the conditions are going to continue to get worse before they get better. And seeing anyone do something with the arts is, it sounds cheesy, but it is truly inspiring because it just, I feel like most creative projects that I've been excited about in the past year that have been canceled, or seeing friends have their things canceled, it makes you feel like, well, there's no point in trying until this is over. But we really don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah.
If that's going to happen, I think that there is so much evidence to support that these ongoing restrictions and reopenings and further restrictions is a part of the plan to get things back to normal. And there's there's no end in sight, but we know that there's an end. And that is stressful at the very least. So I think I had another question about what other needs need to be met to support artists, especially those emerging or those who are underrepresented. And it seems like that's sort of a silly question given our current circumstances. But to rephrase the question, perhaps, what are some of the obstacles that you can pinpoint now, that you're seeing now, that are things you think you can or can be overcome in 2021?
That's a great question. What are some obstacles that can be overcome in 2021? I think I don't know about overcoming quite yet, but to my earlier point about adapting, I think artists need to get creative with the way that they create, the way that they affiliate, and show their work to the world. Obviously, so much of this is virtual, but it doesn't have to be. For example, I reached out to a billboard company and I was like, hey, would you guys be willing to show artists on your billboards for free? They're like, sure, pay just for the printing costs and we'll cover everything else, which is usually thousands of dollars. And I was like, great. So like when people are commuting, they can see Bob Joe's beautiful photography that I fell in love with on a big billboard. And so I think because we're in a pandemic, we have unique challenges to solve, but we also have unique opportunities to explore. And so whether that's a free billboard or if that's, a vacant space that hasn't been leased because the business unfortunately went out of business and you want to do a pop-up art exhibition of just your own work and you find a landlord who's willing to work with you, go for it. Whether that's doing artist meetups in your neighborhood or doing outdoor art galleries, like this is a time to get creative and to make mistakes and to just see what sticks to the wall. And so I think another thing that speaking from Seattle Art Post that I want to do more of, do better at, is to highlight a lot of the other resources that are made available through local organizations who just aren't being seen by artists for whatever reason. There's some really great grants, calls for art, trainings, lots out there that I want to get better at putting in front of people so that they can go for it. And I've tried to do that a bit over the past year. And a lot of it has paid off, but I think there's room for improvement for Seattle Art Post to do that, especially because people are online a lot more right now. And so if there's anything I can do to bring more opportunities to the forefront, that's what we're going to focus on. Because, to your question about the needs of artists right now, I've asked that question repeatedly throughout this pandemic. Artists, what do you need? How could Seattle Art Post bring you the most value in 2021? And the biggest things are we need money, we want to show our work, we want humans to see our work, and we need marketing help because we have moved to a virtual world and a lot of people used to rely on physical in-person opportunities like fairs, and that's just not an option. So those three things are the greatest needs that I've heard from artists. And so I really hope to see a lot more opportunities to meet those needs in 2021, whether it's me or anybody. These needs need to be met. So.
Yeah. I will say that one of the advantages I found with everything becoming remote or everything becoming virtual is that it feels to me as though it's has potential to be the most accessible way to consume or to engage with our work.
True.
I mean, there's the obvious facet where, there's no more physical barriers for access, whether that be, the price of admission or the orientation or the physical space may be difficult for some people to enter, or the travel. So all of those things contribute to these seemingly arbitrary barriers to accessing art.
Absolutely.
And I think that a lot of those can be overcome in the virtual space. And I think that I see Instagram being a great place to market oneself and to showcase artwork. I think perhaps one of the disadvantages of a platform like Instagram is that you can't stand in front of an artwork or in an installation and really have a solid few minutes with the thing, because of a part of the platform is that you are encouraged to continue to scroll and to move on to the next thing. And so that engagement, I feel like, is lacking in the Instagram realm. And perhaps I'm not seeing some of the creative ways that people are using Instagram, but I do see Instagram and similar social media platforms being utilized in place of the physical space where we see art, which
Yep.
is really cool.
Yeah.
What are some of the other advantages to the virtual space that you've encountered, or perhaps even um, have you had to perhaps learn something about using technology that you maybe didn't know how to do before because of needing to use it more often?
Um, well, first, I would like to just, reinforce your point about the virtual world creating a space where art can be more actively consumed. I think this is a reality that has taken the art world some time to get used to. For example, people used to think that art would only sell if somebody could experience it in person. And I agree that the best way to experience art is in person. However, studies have shown, and just data shows, like Artsy, for example. Artsy is a platform, online platform that showcases so many amazing artists and galleries, and some of the art is for sale on there. So many gallerists were hesitant to go on Artsy because they were like, there's no way anybody's going to see this $25,000 painting virtually and buy it. But they were wrong. So many people buy art off of Artsy, and they've never experienced it in person. And so we need to continue to evolve the way that we present art and understand that the virtual world is an appropriate space for it. There is a space for art virtually. And Instagram is a great platform. I think probably the best platform, honestly, to get the world to see your art. I hope that a new app is created soon that is just as widely used as Instagram and Facebook, that is meant to sell craftsmen, artisans' work, where people can buy original work. So that's something that I would like to see. Personally, for me, adjusting to using, social media and technology, I am really bad at it, actually. Really bad at it. I will never be an Instagram influencer. I will never be the person who knows how to use all the hashtags and all the statistics and do all the lives and all that. I'm really not advanced. I'm just consistent. And I think that's what I've also heard from other more successful artists on Instagram, not just organizations, is that they build their following and their influence the most because they're consistent, whether that's posting every day or being consistent about what you post, or doing specific Q&As or lives. I think slowly scaling up is the best way that I've been able to manage a full-time career and this passion project. I have had dreams and ideas of what I can do with Seattle Art Post and how I can start a YouTube channel and a podcast and this and that for years now. But in reality, I can't execute it well. And I know that if I were to pursue that now, I wouldn't do it consistently. And so I don't bite off more than I can chew. I know how to post on Instagram almost every day. It's easy. Finding artists is easy and fun. I do lives probably like once a month or so. And I do my monthly art shows in the community and my biannual Seattle Emerging Art Fair. So I slowly scale up my offerings of what I know I'm able to handle. And so that's why eventually, if I could make Seattle Art Post my full-time gig, there's so much more. I have a list, a long Word document of things that I dream to do for the Seattle art community. And but it takes time, you know, and time is a commodity, and I don't have a lot of it. So I make the most of it with what I can. Um, and I'm really not tech savvy at all. So I make it work. If I can do it, literally anyone can.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Instagram is one of those things that I think there's I have this intuition that you're either good at it or you're not. And I think that that is being proven to me to be false. That you can maybe be a little bit more savvy than some other individual, but I do think that consistency is one of those things that at least the algorithm
Yeah,
will get a hold of
true.
and do a lot of the work for you. Um, but that's great. There is, I think, another realm for art uh, to let's see, to exist in, perhaps to move towards, maybe for artists and organizations alike to shift their attention to. And I think that it's a realm that's not untapped, but I'm thinking of like public art spaces. You mentioned billboards. That's something I would have never thought of. Um, but I noticed for sure in Bellingham, there's like a temporary construction site wall up downtown, and people have been painting, mostly spray painting murals along this wall for months,
Hmm.
and repainting and going over it again. And a lot of those messages are messages of hope and solidarity. And I think a lot of community, or at least the narrative of the place that you're in, is represented in the art that's public,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be within a business or on the street or in a mural, even graffiti tags. All of that contributes to this story of place and of people. And I think ideally, everyone who lives in an area is represented in the artwork that's public. Um, do you see um, anyone doing anything interesting with public art in light of the pandemic that maybe hasn't been done as much recently? Um, Besides the billboards, I think that that's a great idea.
I have to think about the first thing that comes to mind is actually the City of Seattle Office of Art and Culture. I love every call that they put out there. They, you know, at the beginning, I'm pretty sure they were involved with this. If it wasn't the City of Seattle, it was the neighborhood of Pioneer Square. But they commissioned artists to paint the boarded up windows, as businesses were having to close during the pandemic, and they wanted to protect their space, and so they put the boards up. And it's so beautiful. If you just walk down Belltown and Pioneer Square, you see it everywhere, and it's so well executed. But whoever it was, whichever department it was, they recognized the opportunity, but they also compensated the artists pretty generously. In my opinion, for what the materials were and for where it was living. And I feel like it transformed, you know, those pockets of those neighborhoods. I was just driving down there last night with my husband. We just went on a drive downtown, and I was looking around, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. Wow, look at that, look at that. And it feels like culture has been reintroduced to our city. And I have a hard time really identifying what culture is, for me, but I feel it. And it's, for me, it's like when you feel the soul, the expression of somebody's soul through craft. That's my world of culture. And people are doing that, and I love it. The city of Seattle also recently, I'm pretty sure it's still available, put out a call for art for something similar to what you just mentioned. I think it's a construction barrier, and it's like they have like two or three of these walls. One of them is just a chain link fence. Another one is like an actual boarded up wall, and they're commissioning artists for $10,000 to do something, something that comes from their soul. And so, yeah, the city of Seattle is the first department or organization that comes to mind. Um, I'm sure there's more. Urban Artworks, they are amazing. Again, another mural public art thing. During in June for Juneteenth Day, Urban Artworks just did a call for street artists to come out and paint that big wall near Occidental Square, of just anti-slavery, Black Lives Matter type content, and it was beautiful, and it was timely of the essence. And so I think when organizations can recognize opportunities like that and jump on it quick, like that's the only way we're going to be able to make all this work. Like we don't have the luxury of planning something out for months and months and months. Opportunities are coming up quick, and so the ones who take advantage of that, I think, are producing the most value, and the ones who compensate. Artists need to be compensated for what they do. I think there's a place for doing things for free, but especially right now, if they are contributing to society in that way, they need to be paid. So those are the two organizations I can think of. I'm sure there's more. I'm just blanking at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely have seen on Instagram a few images of the boarded up windows being painted, and those things have been great to see.
Yeah.
Being in Bellingham, I don't venture down to Seattle much anymore just because there's so little to do that's done safely. But yeah, I think that being able to notice the new things in one's own neighborhood, especially the creative additions to the a neighborhood or a space in general, is something that just feels good to see at the very least. And I think that that's one of the ways that we can connect with each other, just by like sharing a space that has been contributed to by the folks who inhabit that space, or the people who are there most often.
Yeah.
And I think I've got one last question for you, and you've touched a lot on answering this question already, but I wanted to throw it out there very clearly that if you've got advice or a message to emerging artists who are, whether they're student artists or non-student artists, folks who have a drive, have something to put out in the world, and need a little help in one way or another, what is something that you want them to know?
The first thing that I always say is that if you identify as an artist or a creative person, if you have that innate creative impulse to make that I mentioned earlier, you have a duty to listen to that impulse. It has been an impulse that has been with humanity since the beginning of time. People have had this need to creatively express themselves through material and through every craft known to man. If you have that, you have a duty to follow through on it. And so don't allow yourself to stifle your creative voice like I did, like I tried to after high school, after college, and, listen to that voice. And also, I say this on Instagram a lot, on Seattle Art Post, never stop making. Just keep making work and make work for yourself. I think there is a place to make work for money. Absolutely. If you get those opportunities, you got to grab them, go for them and make that money. But I think it's so important as an artist to create from the most authentic place within yourself, because that's where the best and most interesting work comes out. And so do everything that you possibly can to block out all of the other noise that tells you what you should and should not make. Just make whatever you want to make, whether that's a cheesy coaster with a painting of, I don't know, like Hello Kitty on it. I don't know. If that's what you need to make in that moment, then make it, and just allow your creative expression to come out as authentically as you possibly can in its most purest form. because it's good for you. And if the world has the pleasure of experiencing it, that's good for the world as well. Everybody's contribution through their own creative expression is different for a reason, and I think that's the most beautiful thing about artists. So that's what I would say first, and then, you know, getting through 2021, adapt, put yourself out there. There are many different ways that you can experiment with this. So if you're uncomfortable networking with other artists live on Zoom, then don't worry about it for now. Just, if you don't have Instagram, start an Instagram. If you have a personal Instagram but not an art one, start an art one. Create that website, learn how, take an art class, try a new medium. Man, just try new things, because typically most people have a lot more time right now. Try new things, get creative, try to get your art out there, be like Newt and go to a restaurant or a cafe and be like, hey, you want to show my art? This is what it looks like. Just ask. The worst thing that could happen is that people say no, and then you just move on. One of the best pieces of advice I received from a professor in grad school was shoot for 100 rejections per year, which I have done. You know, you apply to all the opportunities that suit your fancy, and knowing that the majority of them will be rejections, and that's okay, because it desensitizes you to taking it personally, and it motivates you to keep putting yourself out there, and before you know it, you're going to get at least, you know, a couple opportunities, and some of them are going to be really good ones that you're going to be so glad you went for them. There was one other thought that I had on that. Callforentry.org. That is probably the best website to find opportunities to show your work, to get grants, to get residencies. Every artist needs to create an account. It's free to create, and you can just see stuff all over the States. I don't know, I think there's some international ones too, but I've had my work exhibited nationally through that platform. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things for, you know, resource wise. And yeah, I think I'll stop there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. That was all great. Really important advice, especially to hear from someone, a peer, who has done it, who is doing it, someone who recognizes the unique challenges that creative folks are facing right now, let alone in general, when it seems like, especially in the United States, the culture is very much make money, always make more money, and make sure that whatever you do, it earns you more money than the last thing that you did. And I think that those priorities, while totally valid and are necessary where we live, don't really help you in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah.
And that seems like, again, that seems like something that everyone knows and people probably say often, but being able to have this opportunity with you to chat candidly about the nature of the art world as it is, at least in the Seattle area, and online, I think is going to be helpful in connecting people who view this with the world outside of themselves that they are also already a part of, whether they know it or not. So,
yeah. And I mean, I would love to just, in closing, just say that Seattle Art Post started as a very small seed for me of wanting to meet a need. If you have something that you want to try, just go for it. You know, if you have a passion for something and you see a need that's not being met, chances are resources will follow. And so I would highly encourage everybody, whether that's just for you, you know, to try that new medium, or if it's something, a show that you've always wanted to do in this specific space with this type of artist, like, just go for it. You know, you have literally nothing to lose. All you'll lose is, you know, you'll get a rejection, but so what? You know, it's not personal. So go for the thing, whatever that is. New, I'm so happy that you're starting this series. I'm going to follow it on YouTube. I can't wait to see more. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you again so much for joining me. I feel like you've offered really clear and concise and uh, well elucidated perspectives for us today.
Thank you.
Um, and for you and for everyone else watching or who will watch this, the rest of the PSA with ASP series is not just fine art, but also films and music as well. So there are definitely going to be lots of other voices chiming
Love
in
that.
on this conversation about what the creative industry is like. And um, there are definitely going to be more opportunities for viewers to hear some feedback from your community about how to do the thing that you're doing that you want to do with confidence and have it serve you.
Okay,
Um,
sounds great.
yeah, thanks again. This has been
Yeah,
so
thanks for
nice.
having me.
Yeah.